Welcome to our channel, where real true crime stories are told in a quiet, chilling, and haunting way. If you enjoy turning off the lights at night, sinking into an eerie atmosphere, and listening to unresolved mysteries, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. Now let the lights soften, let your body relax, and let your breathing slow down. Settle in, and sink into the stories that follow. Wishing you a peaceful night, and a good sleep. The fall of an NFL legend. Orenthal James Simpson was once a name carried proudly across the United States, seen as a symbol of athletic brilliance and a testament to rising above hardship. Born in San Francisco, he excelled in football from an early age and later became one of the greatest athletes in American sports. After retiring from professional competition, Simpson remained influential and admired, a successful investor, a familiar face in television commercials, and a man whose family life appeared complete from the outside. However, on the night of June 12, 1994, a sequence of events shifted his life onto a completely different trajectory, turning him from a sports icon into the central figure of one of the most divisive and widely watched trials in American history. That foggy night, in the quiet neighborhood of Brentwood, Los Angeles, residents near 875, Bundy Drive discovered two individuals lying motionless in the courtyard of a townhouse. The woman was Nicole Brown, Simpson's former wife, and the man was Ronald L. Goldman, a friend of hers. Both showed severe injuries, shocking the neighbors who immediately contacted the police. Nicole and Simpson once had a romantic story reminiscent of a novel. After Simpson retired from sports and accumulated significant wealth, he married her, a beautiful blonde woman whose presence beside him seemed to complete the picture of success. Yet the marriage did not last. They divorced in 1992, and from then on, tension began to surface. According to acquaintances and investigative documents, Simpson displayed intense jealousy, repeatedly monitoring and pressuring Nicole even after the separation. On the afternoon before the incident, Nicole attended her daughter's school performance. Simpson was also present, though the two did not interact. After the event, Nicole and her friends went to a restaurant where she encountered Goldman, a young waiter she had known months earlier. After dinner, Nicole returned home first, but since she left behind a pair of glasses, she called the restaurant. Goldman offered to bring them to her. Around 10 p.m., he arrived at Nicole's house, likely unaware that this simple act of kindness would be the last calm moment of his life. When he reached the house, everything was quiet. What happened next unfolded in silence, with no witnesses, until the police arrived. The next morning, Nicole lay on the ground in her dark dress, stained and torn, and Goldman was also unresponsive nearby. Scattered around were items that drew suspicion: a knit cap, shoe prints, and a leather glove, small, silent objects that contradicted the tranquility of the upscale neighborhood. Once the police examined the scene, they quickly identified a connection between the victims and Simpson. His home was only a few minutes away. Investigators regarded him as a significant figure in the case, not only because of his past relationship with Nicole, but also due to their documented conflicts. The days that followed formed the first stage of a sprawling legal drama. The Los Angeles justice system, long scrutinized by the public, now prepared to handle an unprecedented investigation. With the quantity of initial evidence, many believed the case would reach a straightforward conclusion. Instead, it unfolded into a story far more complicated. Investigators collected multiple critical elements. Traces found at Simpson's home, including droplets of a red substance on the floor and inside his vehicle. A strand of hair adhered to Nicole's cap matching Simpson's, and a pair of gloves, one discovered at the crime scene, the other in the yard behind Simpson's house. There was also a fresh cut on his finger that raised questions. These findings were cataloged and later shown to the public, seemingly forming an unshakable chain of evidence. Yet from the start, criticisms emerged regarding how authorities handled the scene. Some forensic specialists argued that key procedures were mishandled, potentially contaminating or mislabeling crucial samples. Television commentators and experts debated every technical detail, from chemical markers to the chain of custody, shaping public perception even before the courtroom opened. When the trial officially began on January 24, 1995, it quickly became a national phenomenon. Broadcast live across the country, it kept millions glued to their screens daily. People discussed it everywhere, in small rural diners, bustling office buildings, and families' living rooms. The case reached far beyond legal complexities, touching cultural, racial, and systemic issues that had long simmered in American society. Prosecutors built a narrative centered on jealousy reaching a breaking point, leading to a moment of irreversible action. They presented every piece of evidence meticulously gathered by investigators: footprints, hair samples, fibers, and testimonies from a wide array of witnesses. Each person added a fragment to the overall picture of that fateful night. Meanwhile, the defense team led by Johnny Cochran launched an aggressive counter-strategy. They challenged the reliability of the evidence, claiming mishandling, contamination, and procedural failures. Their case highlighted long-standing distrust between some communities and law enforcement. They questioned lab processes, cross-contamination risks, and even suggested that some samples could have been unintentionally or intentionally altered. Their defense was not just technical but emotional, tapping into deep-seated skepticism about the fairness of the system. One of the trial's most dramatic moments came when Simpson was instructed to try on the gloves believed to be crucial to the case. One glove had been found near the victims, the other at Simpson's home. When he attempted to put them on in front of the jury, the gloves appeared not to fit. Cochran's statement, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit," became a defining line of the entire trial. Public opinion fractured sharply. Polls revealed stark differences in perspective across various demographic groups. For some, the case underscored systemic bias and raised questions about long-standing inequalities. For others, the verdict appeared to contradict the evidence, fueling frustration and disbelief. After more than 8 months of highly publicized proceedings, the jury began deliberations. On October 3, 1995, they returned with a verdict that shocked the nation. Simpson was declared not guilty. The verdict did not end the story. In 1997, a civil trial in Santa Monica re-examined the evidence under different legal standards. This time, the jury concluded that Simpson bore civil responsibility for what happened to Nicole and Goldman. He was ordered to pay substantial compensation to the victims' families. Simpson remained a subject of controversy for years afterward. His book If I Did It, written as a hypothetical account of the events, ignited widespread outrage and forced publishers to weigh ethical concerns in releasing the material. In 2008, Simpson became embroiled in another high-profile legal matter, this time involving a dispute over sports memorabilia at a Las Vegas hotel. The situation escalated into yet another trial, ending with a lengthy prison sentence. After serving several years, Simpson was granted parole in 2017 due to good behavior. He walked out of prison in his 70s, greeted by public curiosity mixed with distrust. Supported partly by retirement funds from his athletic career, he lived a quieter life while still occasionally appearing in public or interacting with fans. Yet the shadow of the Brentwood case remained, forever shaping how the world viewed him. The victims' families, particularly Goldman's father, continued pursuing legal claims for decades. After Simpson passed away from illness, representatives of his estate agreed to settle outstanding obligations owed to the families, adding another chapter to a story that has never fully closed. The life of O.J. Simpson remains a complex blend of fame, controversy, triumph, and turmoil. His story endures not merely as a legal saga, but as a reflection of cultural tensions, media influence, and the profound questions that arise when a national hero becomes entangled in events that reshape his legacy forever. The Lost Footsteps. In the late 1960s, the United States was engulfed in a wave of cultural change, anti-war sentiment, and the rise of the hippie era. At the center of a story that would startle the entire world was a man named Charles Manson, who gathered a group of followers calling themselves the Manson family. Manson was not someone with true artistic talent or a real music career, though he longed to become a famous performer and had, at times, interacted with certain industry figures. His early life was unstable, marked by repeated run-ins with the law, and eventually he attracted a group of young people, mostly those disappointed or lost, many of them young women, who came to live in an isolated community with him. They used drugs, severed ties with their families, and listened to his teachings as if he were a spiritual guide. Manson planted in his followers a strange theory he called helter-skelter, a term inspired by a Beatles song. He convinced them that a large-scale racial conflict would erupt in the United States, and by triggering it, he and his group would hide, then re-emerge as leaders in a new world. According to accounts from those who lived with Manson, he forced them to analyze that album through his own interpretations, even making them listen on repeat until they were exhausted. In the summer of 1969, Manson sent several close followers to carry out a series of events that would grip global attention. On the first night, a group he directed went to a house in the Hollywood Hills, a property belonging to a pregnant actress and her friends. Late that night, the followers entered the home. A young man who happened to be leaving after visiting friends became the first target. Inside, chaos consumed the household. Multiple people inside the residence lost their lives. The actress, full of promise, pleaded for mercy but was overwhelmed. Her friends, each with their own story and linked to either the entertainment industry or business, were also caught in that night of terror. The following evening, the violence continued. Manson led another group to a home owned by a wealthy couple. Two people completely unconnected to anything he had mentioned before, selected at random. After restraining the couple, Manson left, instructing his followers to proceed as ordered. The group then assaulted the couple in their home. Some of them scrawled words using the victim's own blood on walls and a refrigerator, repeating terms linked to the so-called helter-skelter doctrine. Other events occurred around that same period at different locations, carried out by members of the Manson community. Episodes not directly tied to the two households, but driven by the same internal chaos. Individuals such as Bobby Beausoleil and Donald Shorty Shea were pulled into these spirals under various circumstances, making the web of incidents even darker and more complex. Initially, everything appeared mysterious, and investigators struggled to connect the dots. A discarded weapon found on a lawn raised early suspicions that certain incidents might be linked, but it took months for authorities to confirm the connection and tie the events back to Manson and his followers. As the story unfolded, a grim portrait emerged. Manson had controlled those around him with precision, keeping them dependent on drugs, feeding them promises of a new future, and convincing them to abandon families, drop out of school, and live entirely on his terms. Female members later described being exploited and manipulated psychologically to serve Manson's objectives. Eventually, the group members were arrested and brought to trial in the early 1970s. During the long court proceedings, prosecutors gathered evidence and testimony, proving that these were not isolated incidents, but part of a coordinated plan driven by a leader with his own distorted ideology. Manson, and some followers, continued to deny crucial aspects of the motives outlined by the prosecution. Key members such as Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Charles Tex Watson, and Leslie Van Houten received severe sentences. Van Houten, in particular, spent more than 50 years behind bars before being approved for release, making her the first among the group to be allowed out after decades. Others remained incarcerated or embroiled in ongoing debates about their sentences, keeping public attention alive for generations. The case not only shocked America at the time, but also became a symbol of the cost of cultural freedom, in which a group of young people were drawn into a corrupted vision and descended into violence. Discussions about the true motivations, whether they were fully intentional plans or largely the result of psychological manipulation and drug-induced dependency, continue among scholars, documentarians, and filmmakers today. Shadows over the private island. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born in Brooklyn, New York, into a middle-class family. From a young age, he showed remarkable sensitivity to numbers and an exceptional memory. After leaving his job as a teacher at a prestigious private school, he stepped into the world of finance through connections with members of the elite, from investment bankers to influential business leaders. Epstein never revealed the full origin of his wealth, but his network of powerful acquaintances helped him construct the image of a man of status and influence. To many, Epstein was a mysterious figure, wealthy, charismatic, frequently seen at luxurious gatherings, and owner of several extravagant properties and private modes of travel. Yet behind these glamorous parties existed a much darker world. For years, U.S. authorities monitored accusations that Epstein operated a complex system designed to attract young girls and draw them into orchestrated private encounters held in his lavish estates or aboard his private jet. The story began to unravel when multiple former victims and families came forward, recounting disturbing experiences from years past. They described being lured by promises of money, connections, or opportunities, only to be pulled into situations far beyond their control. Federal agents and prosecutors collected evidence from testimonies, seized materials, and documents that gradually revealed the structure of Epstein's operation. By the mid-2000s, authorities in Florida launched an investigation, after a parent reported unusual activities involving their underage daughter at one of Epstein's residences. Instead of leading to a full trial, a legal agreement was announced, one that allowed Epstein to serve only a short period in a local facility while spending most days outside under restricted conditions. This agreement was later widely criticized as it concealed the identities of many affected individuals and denied them a chance to confront Epstein in court. The case might have faded into obscurity had it not been for the later release of additional documents and the growing public demand for transparency. New investigative efforts focused not only on Epstein himself, but also on his associates, the celebrities, influential figures, and public personalities who had appeared at his events, gatherings, or on his private aircraft. Media outlets began reporting on previously unseen files that contained the names of prominent individuals, raising further suspicion and fueling debate across the country. Federal prosecutors relaunched a major investigation, this time aiming to pursue charges rooted in federal law, accusing Epstein of organizing and maintaining a network that targeted underage girls. When he was arrested at an airport after returning from Paris, the public saw confirmation of what victims had described for years. Private encounters taking place inside his Manhattan mansion, his Florida estate, and even on a secluded island he owned in the Caribbean. Staff members were required to sign strict confidentiality agreements, and some later revealed details they had kept silent for a long time. Inside a detention center in New York, where Epstein was held while awaiting trial, his story reached a controversial conclusion. After several days in his cell, he was found unresponsive. Guards attempted to revive him, and he was transported to a nearby hospital, where doctors confirmed that he did not survive. The official ruling stated that he had taken his own life, but the announcement immediately provoked widespread skepticism, as many believed that the information Epstein possessed about powerful individuals could explain why his life ended so abruptly. His death did not close the case. Court documents, legal filings, and testimonies continued to surface as new transparency requirements took effect. These materials revealed further connections to high-profile individuals, although not all were prosecuted. Civil lawsuits were filed, some resulting in settlements outside the courtroom. Meanwhile, the public continued to question how the justice system had handled the case, and whether true accountability had ever been achieved. The Epstein case remains layered and complex, a mix of unexplained wealth, unchecked ambition, powerful connections, and unanswered questions about how deeply the network extended. With each newly revealed document, a broader picture emerges, one that forces society to confront the nature of power, secrecy, and the protective walls surrounding the influential elite. Invisible traces. In the 1990s, investigators in southern Germany began to notice genetic traces from an unidentified woman appearing across a series of unrelated incidents, scattered not only throughout Germany, but also extending into Austria. The forensic results matched with such consistency that authorities became convinced they were tracking a single elusive figure. Within investigative circles, this unknown presence earned ominous nicknames such as the Phantom of Heilbronn and the Faceless Woman. Early assessments pointed toward a long-running, cross-border pattern of dangerous behavior, placing increasing pressure on law enforcement agencies. These forensic traces surfaced in strikingly varied settings: inside a vehicle that had been interfered with, within a ransacked residence, and even on small, seemingly insignificant objects left behind in open fields. At times, genetic material appeared on items that seemed almost impossible to link to any one individual, deepening the mystery. A composite sketch was eventually released, yet it conflicted with the biological profile derived from the evidence. Witness accounts were vague or non-existent, and no one could confirm having seen this mysterious woman in person. As months turned into years, investigators felt compelled to connect disparate cases into a single narrative, assigning this unseen figure the role of a unifying thread across a wide geographical map. The investigation expanded relentlessly, accompanied by public appeals for information and substantial rewards, but concrete progress remained elusive. Doubts intensified when the same genetic profile appeared in records related to the fingerprints of an asylum seeker believed to have vanished. The contradiction was impossible to ignore. The biological trace attributed to a woman was now present in documentation belonging to a man. Re-examinations of the data produced conflicting outcomes, forcing investigators to confront the possibility that something fundamental had gone wrong. After years spent chasing uncertain leads, attention finally turned inward, toward the very tools used in the investigative process. Forensic specialists, alongside investigative journalists, uncovered a critical flaw: the cotton swabs used to collect samples. Although these swabs were manufactured under sterile conditions suitable for medical use, they were not designed to eliminate every trace of skin cells. Genetic material from a female factory worker had inadvertently been transferred onto countless swabs, which then carried her biological signature from one location to another. What appeared to be a single roaming figure was, in fact, an artificial trail created by contaminated equipment. When the truth emerged, authorities were forced to acknowledge that thousands of hours and significant resources had been devoted to pursuing an illusion. Once the false connection was removed, several serious cases previously obscured by the so-called phantom were reassessed, allowing investigators to identify the actual groups responsible. The episode became a lasting lesson in the limits of modern forensic science, underscoring how even advanced techniques can mislead when the most basic materials fail to meet the appropriate standards. The Pizza Delivery Man. The story begins in late August 2003 in Erie, Pennsylvania, when 46-year-old pizza delivery man Brian Wells drove to the PNC Bank according to his work schedule. From his actions at that moment, no one could have predicted the strange chain of events that was about to unfold. Upon entering the bank, Brian wore a device around his neck, which he claimed had been attached by others, a device with a timer seemingly counting down. In his hands, he carried a note demanding he withdraw $250,000 from the bank, with the warning that time was running out to comply. He left the bank with over $8,000 in a bag and drove off in the direction soon intercepted by police. When he sat down on the street, he told those nearby that a group had forced him into this situation, that he could not be safe unless he followed their instructions precisely, and that the device was beeping faster and faster. Just minutes later, an explosion occurred in the middle of the neighborhood, captured on camera by the press. Witnesses saw Brian calling for help in his final moments. The investigation revealed extraordinary clues. Inside Brian's vehicle, investigators found handwritten notes containing complex instructions, not only demanding money from the bank, but also leading to a series of clues to find keys and codes to deactivate the device. The notes' repeated use of the pronoun "we" suggested to investigators that more people were involved than just Brian. Meanwhile, the public and experts questioned whether Brian was entirely a victim or had participated in some part of the elaborate plan. In the years following, testimonies and evidence made the story even more complex. A man named William Rothstein informed the police about a body found in a frozen garage. According to Rothstein, his ex-girlfriend Marjorie Deal Armstrong, a highly educated woman with psychological disorders, was involved along with him and others. Investigators later learned that Deal Armstrong had asked Kenneth Barnes, an acquaintance, about creating the type of device worn by Brian, and sought to secure the required funds for her own personal plans concerning her family. Over the years, Deal Armstrong and Barnes were prosecuted and tried for their roles in the case. Deal Armstrong received a life sentence, while Barnes received many years and later died during his sentence. Testimonies from various witnesses, including Brian's friends, suggested that he might have known part of the plot and attempted to withdraw when he realized the severity of the device he was forced to carry. His family and friends consistently described him as a normal, gentle man leading a humble life before everything happened. This story became a media phenomenon, widely analyzed in multi-part documentaries, painting a picture full of contradictions. A sophisticated plot, an ordinary person caught in a plan beyond his control, and mysteries that were never fully resolved, leaving the public and experts to continue questioning the motives and nature of those behind it.